how do I not feel like this book is a sellout book? How do I make sure that I'm writing it for the right reasons, that I'm not writing it just because I know it's something that could be published? So I think I'm just gonna try to vlog another week in my life as a full-time writer. If you wanna catch up on everything that I've been doing in the last few weeks, you can watch my last vlog. That vlog was all about me revising my cyberpunk novel Local Heavens for the 6th time, actually. That was draft 6. That was kind of an impromptu revision. I didn't originally plan on revising that book, but now that I turned in that most recent revision to my agent, I'm back writing fantasy, and I think I'm going to focus this week on working on The Floating House, which is my adult fantasy novel that I have been drafting kind of consistently since March of this year, and we're currently 50,000 words in. Today I actually was working on a short story, so I made some progress on one of my cyberpunk short stories. It's actually, I've been rewriting a short story that I wrote last year because I kind of wanted to like completely change the ending. I wanted to change some stuff about the characters. So that's what I did today. Before we continue with this vlog, I wanted to quickly thank the kind folks over at Bjok for sponsoring this video. Bjok, which is short for Bring Your Own Keyboard, is a new ultra-portable, distraction-free writing device that's designed to elevate your writing experience so that you can focus on what matters most, which is getting your draft done. Whether you're traveling, moving around the house, or you just want to be more productive at your desk, Bjok is designed to be completely flexible to your writing needs, to your lifestyle, and the best part is that it works with any Bluetooth or USB keyboard. You guys know I love my keyboard. For me, a writing tool that can sync to something that I already own is super convenient. And of course, having all of your social media apps super accessible whenever you're on your computer, or just having access to an internet browser while you're writing, is the #1 thing that personally derails my writing sessions, and it definitely can make me a lot less productive when I'm writing. With Bjok, the simple and compact design helps you stay on track so you can focus on just putting words onto the page. It has an impressive battery life of up to 20 continuous hours, adjustable backlight options, keyboard versatility, a built-in backing so you can prop it up at the ideal ergonomic height for your eye level, which really helps reduce eye strain and neck pain. The backing is also magnetic, so it's compatible with any magnetic stands. It also has a local storage of 16 megabytes, which can hold over 1 million words, so you don't have to worry about running out of space, and even if the battery runs out, you won't lose any work. There are multiple data transfer options to keep your work secure, accessible, and always up to date. With Wi-Fi, you can sync your files wirelessly to platforms like Google Drive, but it also comes with a USB-C port if you prefer to transfer your files wired directly to your computer. The UI also offers varied font sizes, a fast refresh rate on an LCD monochrome screen, word count and battery life indicator, and right now the device comes in both black or white, so you can pick the style that fits you. If you're interested in learning more, make sure you click the link in my description box to check it out for yourself. And thanks again to Bjok for sponsoring this video.
Where are we going? Oh, well, it's too early for lunch. Yeah, it is. It's too early. Because you already got 2 breakfasts, right? You did. You got 2 breakfasts.
When we first got Clementine, she was really not good with being picked up, like, at all. But we've made some progress.
Oh, Chloe! You're on camera, Chloe. You can have kibble for this.
So today is actually Thursday. Yesterday I didn't vlog. I was just working on The Floating House. I think I've been away from the draft for about a month, so I just I had to remember basically like what happened in this book so far. Like I just like kind of needed a refresher. So that's how I spent a little bit of Tuesday and Wednesday. And then for today, I think I'm just gonna try to like make some progress. I'm currently writing Act 2. Honestly, you guys, as I've been reading this draft, okay, wait, I feel like I need to give some like back story or whatever. Sorry, I'm just like putting my Scrivener file back into light mode. I usually switch light mode, dark mode for Scrivener, depending on my vibe for the day. But I feel like I've talked about sporadically in my vlogs about how this book, it's gone through quite a journey. It's gone through some struggles. Haven't been following along. Basically, The Floating House was once, it's based on some of the world building that I originally had in my second novel, Nightward, which I started revising, and then I stopped revising it in order to write Local Heavens. My plan, just to like give a whole recap for people who are new here, my plan at the time, this was like mid 2022, my plan at the time was to write as much of Local Heavens as I could until I got bored of it. It wasn't a project, I don't want to say Local Heavens wasn't a project that I was taking seriously, but it was a project that I didn't think that I would query, and I wanted to have a novel that I could query. Obviously, what ended up happening for the rest of 2022 and half of 2023 is that I did end up querying that novel. I did secure literary representation on that novel, and then we revised it, and then we went out on submission with it. So that is like, that obviously took a lot of time. It took many drafts. So that's what happened with Local Heavens. And then basically when Local Heavens went out, I was like, okay, like what am I working on now? At the time that I had wrapped Local Heavens, like even before I started querying it, I was already looking back on Nightward and thinking that it was just not a good book. It wasn't thematically focused. It was messy from a world building magic system perspective. The characters, you know, they were all right, but they weren't as, their arcs weren't as fulfilling as they could be, like these kinds of things. And so I took a lot of the world building of Nightward, but I was like, let's burn it all down. Let's write a new premise. Let's take the same like concept of the dual protagonists, and we'll just like come up with a better story, a better premise, a better inciting incident, and a better magic system. So that is what has now become The Floating House. I technically started drafting this all the way back in August 2023, and then I got through like the first chapter, and then I didn't pick it up again until February, March of this year. And I think in all of that time, I was really like flip-flopping on whether or not The Floating House was an interesting book. I was like, does anyone want to read this book? Give some context on like why I was feeling this way. I think it's because to me, I know that, and I haven't shared the premise of The Floating House yet. And also The Floating House is not its real title. When I was developing the premise, I was specifically developing it with publishing in mind. And this was kind of the first time that I was doing that. You know, when I was writing Local Heavens, which is a cyberpunk Gatsby retelling, I like wrote, Local Heavens was like that wild fever dream fun project. And then, you know, and it's also sci-fi, and publishing, you know, doesn't buy a lot of debut sci-fi. So I was a little bit scarred from writing Local Heavens, and, you know, the rejections that I was getting while I was querying, and just being like, oh my god, no one wants to read sci-fi supposedly. You know what, I'm gonna buckle down, I'm gonna write a fantasy book, I'm gonna write something that I know, you know, fits the market a little bit more. And so I was originally, what I was trying to balance with The Floating House was, how do I not feel like this book is a sellout book? How do I make sure that I'm writing it for the right reasons, that I'm not writing it just because I know it's something that could be published, because technically all books could be published. And one thing that I remember hearing from, I think it was Olivie Blake, I was watching one of her vlogs, she was saying how traditional publishing can make anything marketable if they want to. They make the decisions on what they think is going to sell, you know, prior to that book being released, and that's what they invest in prior to that book being released. I just think that that piece of publishing wisdom from Olivie Blake, who has had such a like non-traditional path to publishing success was really interesting. When you think about it, like when I first heard her say that like I was writing stuff that was considered weird and unpublishable, and I was like, the Atlas 6? People thought the Atlas 6 was like not for traditional publishing. But then I can also see where she's coming from. There's so many like POVs in that book, and I think nowadays we see a lot of like books that comp to the Atlas 6, that comp to these like multiple POV, you know, academia books. But I can see how she might have felt like that book wouldn't have done well in traditional publishing at the time, even though now it's like this breakout hit that really like rose organically. For me, I was like, you know, going back to the floating house, I need to make sure that I am writing this book because I actually want to write it, because I feel like it's a good story, because I feel like it's a meaningful story. There were a lot of moments when I was struggling in Act 1 and at the start of Act 2 where I was like, I don't know, is this book boring? I think that was a really like unfair thing to ask myself. I think it stopped me from seeing how much I actually cared about the story. I think it was also undercutting how much my intuition as a writer has grown over the last like even just the last 2 years. I've learned so much about myself as a writer just from having to revise. You know, I did, you know, so many revisions on Local Heaven. I have like learned a lot about market expectations, but also about the fact that I should trust my gut as a writer. My whole point is that I took a break from the floating house for an entire month, and I was reading it from the top for the last 2 days. And I kid you not, the entire time I was like, the book is fine. Like, it's good. And I'm not, you know, it's still a first draft. But I think that my pacing is there. I think the seeds of really interesting characters are in there. I just kind of like was laughing a little bit as I was reading, because I was like, this is the book that I thought was horrible. I don't know, I'm like in the thick of Act 2 and so many crazy things are happening. Yeah, there's just like, I'm extremely excited to write Act 2. Like, I usually hate writing Act 2. I usually really enjoy Act 1. Act 2 is the mushy middle that I absolutely hate. And usually Act 3 is like the act where I have all of the scenes that I'm excited to write. But I actually think Act 2 is the more interesting act for me, because I just know if I can make it through this Act 2, I can make it through this book. Yesterday, I wrote about how many words did I write? Oh, I wrote 3,000 words yesterday. If I was still working full-time, I don't know how I would be able to bang out a 3K day, but I'm really happy that I did. Why did I write 3K yesterday? Like, what was I even doing? Oh, I remember. Oh my God, I remember. So when I was drafting this a month ago, I actually didn't finish all of Act 1. I was kind of like zero drafting the last 2 chapters of Act 1, so I skipped over like half a scene. So I remember what I did yesterday. I was finishing that scene, which I did. The 2 main characters, they meet about halfway through Act 1. They meet at like the 60% point of Act 1. There's like 5-6 chapters go over them like meeting and all of the stuff that happens as they meet. The characters already know each other. That's like one thing that changed between Nightward, the original iteration of this book, and The Floating House, is that originally the 2 main characters didn't know each other, and I decided it would be a lot more interesting if they did already know each other, and then just kind of like writing around this complicated past that they have and this traumatic experience that really fucked them both up, you know? Did that, and then what else did I do yesterday? Oh yeah, I also wrote one of the flashback scenes. Whenever I am writing flashback scenes, I usually skip over them initially, and then I write ahead, and then I go back to it, because I find, you know, with interludes, with flashbacks, because they are complementary to the main plot, sometimes I find that it's just better for me and less daunting for me to write some of that main plot first to figure out like what should the goal of that flashback or interlude scene actually be, so that it is, you know, working in conjunction with the main current timeline. Because I think that's sometimes one thing that I struggle with, or that I have struggled with my previous manuscripts, is like I can feel intuitively that like this is where the flashback scene needs to go, or this is where the interlude needs to go, but like what do I, you know, how do I make that scene? as efficient as possible. So yeah, I didn't finish writing it. I just kind of like wrote out the dialogue for it, and then I was editing one of the first big fight scenes. So many action sequences in this book, like way more than any of my other manuscripts. So I have had to like train myself to enjoy writing it. Historically have not enjoyed writing action sequences, but I think I'm like feeling a little bit more comfortable about it with this book because I've had to do it so many times. So yeah, I did that. I finished editing that big fight scene where a lot of things happen. It's actually so crazy, like the things that happened in the span of these 2 chapters. Like when I was reading it yesterday, I was like, oh my god, I did do that. So I'm gonna finish editing the rest of this chapter today, and then I might try to make some progress on the next chapter. I don't know how that's gonna go. The next 2 chapters after chapter 18, which is the chapter that I have to finish today, the next 2 chapters are an interlude chapter, so we briefly go into the perspective of one of the side characters, and then a flashback chapter. So that's the flashback chapter where we get all of the context on why the main 2 characters don't like each other. I don't actually know if I'm gonna write these now. I might skip over them depending on how I feel. I have a plan. I have a plan for the day. It is Friday. My progress has slowed once again. There's this chapter that I needed to finish yesterday. It's a very long chapter. It's a very long chapter. And I was checking the word count of Act 2, 20,000 words in, and we are not even halfway through this act. I think so long. I have the last scene that I need to finish, which I want to do today. And then as I was kind of like looking at the rest of the plan for this act, there's like 2 more major events that need to happen, and I have allotted about 3 chapters to the next major event in the act. I'm wondering if I need all 3 chapters. I might just need 2 depending on how things go. 1 more flashback chapter to write for this act. Yeah, and then oh my god, I'm so stressed out about this word count. I just don't know if like bitten off more than I can chew in terms of like subplots, all of the side characters. I don't feel like I'm overwriting anything yet. Might just mean that the scope of the story and like all the things that I want to do are a little bit too big. I'm stressing about it a little bit, but it's fine. The one thing that I can't figure out, and I'm like trying to check my outline that I wrote a long time ago, I'm trying to figure out if this interlude chapter that goes into the perspective of one of the side characters, I don't know where to place it in Act 2. I don't know if I need to place it before this next big event that I have to write or after. That's what I've been kind of like brainstorming for the last half hour, is where do I write it? I'm just like conflicted about deviating from my outline because I can't remember why. Like I made a big, not a big change. I made impromptu. I made a change to some of the cast dynamics. There's like something that happens to this one character that originally I didn't like plan for in my outline, but as I was writing the last sequence, action sequence, I just felt like this pivotal thing needed to happen to this character. Not just because I think it was a good arc for that character, but because I feel like it's a good thing for one of the main characters, the male main character, for him to like grapple with. It's not like a death or anything, but that one change that I made for that side character is kind of shaking things up a bit. Clemmy! How was your nap, Clemmy?
Woo! How are you feeling today, Clemmy? Okay.
Let's start it. My afternoon cup. Alright, it is now 10 p.m. and I finished the freaking chapter. Finally. Oh my god. I don't know why that took me like basically the entire day to finish this chapter, but it's a long ass chapter. This chapter ended up being 3,500 words. I felt like this chapter was just like not ending. I've decided I'm going to push back the flashback chapter that I was originally gonna write next, but I do need to write this interlude chapter, and I don't really know what I want to do with it yet. This is the thing about first drafts, you know? It's all vibe. We don't know what's going on. Trying to figure things out. Whenever I'm drafting something, I really miss revision. In revision, the things are already written out and you just have to fix it and polish it. This blank page, I don't know what to do about her. You know, it is what it is. By my estimation, we're looking at a potentially 120K first draft, but it could be worse. Anything over 120K for a first draft is like frightening.
I'm coming. Wait. Okay, let's go. Go to your spot. Go to your spot. Okay, you're welcome.
Hello. Happy Saturday. I spent this morning doing content stuff. I made my TikTok almost a year ago and I was posting somewhat consistently for a while. And then I took a break in like April-ish. Like I took a long TikTok hiatus because, I don't know, TikTok kind of stresses me out. Like, don't really like making short form content, to be honest. If I want to talk about writing, like I prefer to just talk about it in a long form video. I don't want to ignore the platform entirely. So I feel this like guilt about the fact that I was ignoring my TikTok for 4 or 5 months, which obviously is like really dumb. I don't know, I would just prefer to write my books.
Clemmy, how many meals have you had today? Yeah, that's right, you had 3. And how many have I had? 0.
It's time for afternoon update. I got through a good chunk of chapter 19. I think I wrote like half of it, and then I laid out the dialogue, the rest of the scenes for the chapter. I'm going to probably let that one sit because I do that a lot when I'm drafting. I don't necessarily write the scene all at once. We'll just write the dialogue out first, some stage directions, and then I'll fill it in later. So I did that, and now I'm trying to figure out the layout of the scenes for my next 2 chapters because these 2 chapters are like connected. There's like a big thing that the characters have to go out and do. Like they have this plan to go do something. They're stealing something. Let me double check my outline. Every single day I have like a 3 to 4 p.m. crash. Like I just get extremely unproductive in the early evening / late afternoon. So I probably won't be writing anything until maybe later tonight, like after dinner, because I'm gonna take like a bit of a break because my brain's a little fried right now. I have to figure out what happens in this sequence. So to be honest, there was a point in time where I thought I'm just gonna delete this entire side quest, but I think I need it. I think it's still a good thing. Actually, you know what? Wait, now I'm doubting everything. Actually, no, we need it. I just remembered the huge, insane plot twist that is supposed to happen at the end of these 2 chapters. We can't get rid of that. That one's too good. I had a late night writing session yesterday. So I was able to finish a scene last night. And then I have one more scene left to write for the chapter, which I'm gonna do today. And yeah, then we're on chapter 20, which I think my estimation is chapter 20 is the midpoint, like the real official midpoint of this book. It's crazy. I'm excited. I'm just excited to make progress on this book and to like hit a milestone with it, because I feel like in a lot of ways, I feel like I've wanted to get through this story idea for so long now that I'm like finally ready to just finish it, you know, just to like make some significant progress, because I think Act 2 midpoint, it's a big hump, and I think mentally I'll feel a lot better if I can just do it. Let's get to writing. Oof. I didn't write as much as I wanted to yesterday, but it's fine. I was able to finish chapter 19, the last scene of that chapter, which is like I consider to be like a preparation chapter. for the characters. Like they're getting ready to go do something really dangerous and important. So it was a preparation chapter, and the last scene of that chapter just ended up being a little bit longer than I thought it would have to be. I kind of like got an idea for an extra plot point that I wanted to happen during this big event. It would require like a little bit more setup for me to like make that moment impactful, I think. All part of discovery writing. I'm gonna try to make progress on that chapter. It's gonna be a very like intense chapter. I have to like lock in basically. Happy Tuesday. Dark out here. Yesterday I spent a lot of time just trying to figure out things like the description and layout of the setting, and I just spent hours on that, and I think I only got through first scene of the chapter. I just wanted to like put some time and effort into actually figuring out what this setting looks like. And the other thing is that I was actually going back through my old draft, so Project Night or Nightward. There is a very similar scene in Nightward in the original draft where the two main characters are infiltrating this venue. Their reason is very different in this book than it is in the first book. It's kind of like it's a very similar setting, and I was trying to like comb through my original draft and like trying to figure out like, oh, did I already do a lot of this setting description? Can I just rework what I've already written? Much to my disappointment, my setting description was really bad in the first draft. And so I didn't really have much to work with, which is kind of like sad. I thought I would have more. I did have some like interesting interactions between some of the characters that I'm trying to repurpose.
You want to say hi, Clemmy? Hello.
Hello. Today's Wednesday. It's already evening. There's so many characters that are gonna be like in this scene, but we're almost there. I mean, we made some decent progress. I'm writing the last scene of the chapter now. I don't know, I guess when you hit the midpoint of a book, it's usually like such a pinch point because you have to set up so many things for Act 3, but then you also have to kind of like advance the plot points that you set up in Act 1. All of these like threads and conflicts are coming together, and I'm trying to like balance all of them. Act 2. I don't know why today I dreamt, it seems, that my agent had given me feedback on this pitch that I missed. So I was like, I kind of like freaked out, and I was checking my emails again. It was back when I told her about the pitch for this book, which was probably back in like March or something like that. I was worried that she had said something that I forgot to note down. Going back through our emails, it seems like she actually didn't have anything to say about the initial pitch, and I was like dreaming of an email that never got sent to me. Yeah, the last time that we touched base about this book was like back in May. I think we had been talking about something else related to submission for Local Heavens. In it, she just basically said that she was like still really excited to read this book. You know, it's actually funny. I remember why I thought that she had given me a piece of feedback, because I think when we were on a Zoom call okay, this is such like a random thing. She always like describes Local Heavens as a very sexy book. The first time that she told me that, so shocked. I never approached it like that. Sexy can mean a lot of things, by the way. The book isn't like a romance. I would say that there are aspects of the book that are very romantic, maybe like the way that it meditates on the internal conflicts, romantic outlook on humanity and life and that kind of thing. I think it's funny that sometimes someone can like describe your book positively in ways that like you never even think about. I think it's kind of like how I felt when I was first getting feedback on Local Heavens from my friends, and they kept telling me that Nick as a main character was very like readable and very likable. That shocked me because I was like, I thought he was annoying. But anyway, I remember when I was talking to my agent on like a Zoom call, she also described the floating house as being a very sexy concept as well. I was like, that is not a word that I would ever use to describe my work, but am I mad? Am I mad about it? Not really. I'm trying to like keep that at the forefront of my mind. Today is Thursday. Last night I was actually able to finish a good chunk of chapter 20. It's a good midpoint. Like, I personally feel like it's a good midpoint. I think there's like a lot of threads coming together, and usually at this point in my drafts for like my last 3 books, I've always felt like there's just something not quite right with the tension whenever I reach the midpoint, or whenever I'm like in the throes of act 2. Maybe I just have like first draft blindness, but I feel like I don't really feel that kind of stress in the way that I usually do with my last 3 books. I actually did a lot of upfront planning for this book in terms of the world and the magic and how I want the magic to embody the themes of this project. I think I did a lot of that upfront brainstorming because I knew that that was one of the biggest things that I had been struggling with in the first 2 fantasy manuscripts that I wrote. I just didn't feel like I was doing that properly. One thing that I learned when I was writing Local Heavens, well, Local Heavens is a science fiction book, but I think the way that I like to approach fictional science and also magic is kind of the same. I love writing science fiction, but I will never be a hard science fiction writer. As someone who like factually wrote a science fiction novel, but was never concerned with like the realism of the science. Anyways, my point is I learned things. I can let go of a lot of the questions of being like scientifically accurate, developing literal magic or literal fake technology. I can just mold it to what this story needs and the kind of story that it is. And I think like because I have been able to let go of that, some of that stuff, and because I put so much like thought up front, I'm having a smoother drafting experience. I could potentially like still finish this draft by this year. Like when I think about my publishing plans, I do selfishly want to go on submission with this as fast as possible. Since 2020, I've actually averaged 1 manuscript a year. 4th book that I'm writing in 4 years. If I finish it this year, I will have literally written 4 books in 4 years. Isn't bad, you know? Like I'm pretty proud of that track record, but obviously I'm not trying to like force myself to write it faster than I have to. You know, my agent's a pretty editorial agent and we're definitely gonna do some revision on this. As I'm like getting further along in the story and I'm trying to enjoy the book right now as it's just mine. As soon as you have beta readers, as soon as it goes to my agent, as soon as it goes out, I'm gonna start having the same thought processes as I had when I was writing Local Heavens, which was like, while I was drafting, I was so locked in and I like didn't care. I just put everything that I wanted to put into that book. And as soon as you start thinking about publishing, it really like destroys the relationship that you have with the book. I felt like I had to actively restore that relationship with the book, and it took a lot of work. It also took like a mental toll on me. I just don't want to be worrying about that too early with The Floating House. I want to enjoy it while it's still mine. That's the end of this vlog. Thank you for following me for this week in my life. If you want to support the channel, I have a Ko-fi community. I hope all your writing projects are going well. I'll see you guys in the next video.
Hoping we could take it slow. You the type of dime I'm really trying to get to know.